Hi, welcome back. Today is the review day, preparing you for your first unit test coming up on Wednesday. Everybody's going to have a different need for what it is you need to do to review. You know that last class you were given your Unit 1 review assignment, and I gave you 2 days to complete it. So spending some of today's period to do that is a great idea. Secondly, in the event that you have any homework outstanding, right? You have not submitted some homework. Remember that homework is only submittable for points, valuable, until you take the unit test. So if you haven't submitted any homework, you got to get it all in before Wednesday morning. Thirdly, I went through the unit test and I compared what I taught you versus what's on the test. And I found a couple things that I think I need to go over a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach, so I take off the blur feature. I'm going to teach about 3 or 4 topics here using this worksheet that I've handed out to you to cover those gaps. Once I instruct this stuff, you'll have the rest of the period, which is almost an hour, to do whatever it is you personally need to do, including finishing that review, cleaning up some old homeworks, asking questions on things that are difficult, or repairing your quiz. You remember last week we did the quiz. Some people got great scores and you're all set. You have evidence that you understand the content. There were also some people that didn't get such a great score. And I told you that if you have better knowledge than that, if you don't feel that's an accurate representation of your understanding, you could prove that to me today by taking an online quiz in Canvas today. If you can demonstrate 80% of this on my online quiz, then I will go and allow you to waive or excuse the quiz score you've got that's a low score. The result then would be your test category doesn't have any grades in it until Wednesday's test. So you're almost using your Wednesday's test as a replacement for this quiz grade. You don't get to replace the quiz grade with an A if you earn it on my online test. You just get to excuse it, take it out of your grade. So we'll do that after I get done with this instruction. Okay, any questions high level? Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is I've got a die here, right? Normal die 1 through 6. And if in fact I were to roll this die, it will come up a 5. True or false? Now, is that going to happen every time? You should see me in Vegas. Is that going to happen every time? Oops, sorry. No. So the point is, saying true or false doesn't make a lot of sense, right? What you should say is sometimes it'll come up as a 5. Sometimes it won't. Now, that means that we've got a better phrasing than true, false. We can use always, sometimes, or never as an answer. So if I say, if I roll this dice, it's going to come up with an even number. Would you say always, sometimes, or never? Well, there's a 2. So there is a case when it happens, but there's that 5 again, which means it's not an even number. So since it sometimes comes up even and sometimes it doesn't, you would select sometimes for that. Let's take a look at our note sheet here. A line has endpoints. What goes in there? Always, sometimes, or never? Okay, so those of you saying sometimes and those of you saying never are agreeing that there is a case where there's not endpoints in a line. You're disagreeing about whether there's a case where there are endpoints for a line. So what's the case where there are endpoints for a line? When it's a segment or array, which is not a line. So if we're saying a line, we're talking about something that has arrows on both ends. Therefore, it always, sometimes, or never has endpoints. Never. Because if it had 2 endpoints, it would be a segment. And if it had 1 endpoint, it would be an array. Second one, a line and a point blank intersect. Sometimes, right? I can draw a case where they do intersect. I can draw a case where they do not intersect. Therefore, sometimes. A point and a plane blank intersect. Sometimes, right? I could have a scenario where the point is coplanar. I could also have a scenario where the point and the plane are in different planes, therefore sometimes again. Two planes intersect in a line. Okay, if you're saying sometimes, what's the case where they do not intersect in a line? When they're what? But planes go on infinitely in all directions except up and down, right? When they're parallel, good. So I could have two parallel planes that would never intersect. I could also have two planes like our ceiling and a front wall that do intersect, and where they intersect is a line. So again, sometimes. 2 points blank determine a line. Good, because if I draw 2 points and I tell you that these 2 points are on some line, do you know what line I'm talking about? The line AB, right? The one that goes through those 2 points. In other words, just 2 points is enough to determine a line. So that's an always true. Little typo issue here. 3 points blank determine a plane. Sometimes, okay, what's the case where they do? Non-collinear, they definitely determine a plane. Good. And what's the case where they don't? Good. When they're linear, then there's infinite planes that run through that, like we talked about the Rolodex. So this is a sometimes. Any 3 points not on the same line, blank determine a plane.
Always.
Good. Always. If they're non-coplanar, non-collinear, then they always determine that plane. Lastly, 2 lines that are not parallel, blank intersect. Never? Always? Always?
But it can be, it's like
In 3D, which is that word, what'd you just say? Skew. If 2 lines are skew, then they don't intersect and they're not parallel. So 2 lines that are not parallel, which could be intersecting or skew, sometimes intersect. Now, this little activity did 2 things. One, it forced you to think harder about intersection between points, lines, and planes. You should be familiar with that concept. Secondly, it asked you to do it in a way that requires greater thinking, always, sometimes, and nevers. Any questions on that activity? You could expect something like that on the test. Okay. Second thing. There are 2 worlds of equating stuff in geometry. There's the world of congruence, and there's the world of equality. And green is hard to see, isn't it? Let's see if I got something better here. Okay. So what does it mean for 2 things to be equal? Same value. Nice wording. In other words, there's a numerical expression. Anytime you're dealing with numbers, that's a world of equality. Similarly, anytime you're adding numbers, that's a world of equality. Which means anytime we're looking at an object in geometry and only looking at its measure, for example, the measure of AB, also written like just that, or the measure of an angle. All those cases are appropriately using equality symbols. But there are several cases where you're talking about the entire object. And just like, I know in English we say, Jack, how old are you? 15. So in English we say Jack is 15. but can we agree that that's not Jack? That's not what Jack is. It doesn't encapsulate him as an individual. He's charming, he's funny, he's a great friend, he's smart, right? All those things that are true about him are beyond him being 15. In fact, Spanish has a great way of doing this. How does Spanish tell you your age? Caleb? Yeah. So how do you say Jack in Spanish?
Yeah,
Is it part of John? So Juan, maybe? It's Juan? Yeah. So Juan tiene 15 años. Says he has this experience of 15 years, which makes much more sense. Right, you own this many years because that's one attribute. It's an experience you've got. Please be quiet. However, objects, things like segment AB, please be quiet, folks. Segment AB has many attributes. I can't use equality because there's not just one attribute about this. I need to use congruence and describe the entire experience. Similarly with angles, when I'm talking about the entire angle, I use congruence. And we'll discover later when we get into triangles, we also use congruence. We're talking about the whole triangle. So what am I getting to here? Well, let's take a look at number one. It says angle PSD is congruent to 18 degrees. So ask yourself, PSD, is that written in a way that should be colored pink because it's a congruence component, it's an object, or is it written in a way that should be blue because it's a numerical value? It's an object, right? Like angle ABC, angle PSD. What about congruence? Is congruence pink or blue? It's pink, right? It's part of the congruence world. What about the number 18? That's an equals world. So notice that I've got two pinks and a blue. That's mixing up different communications we should be using. So this is an invalid way to write something. Your formatting is off if you tried to write it like this. Okay, what about the next one? Next one says measure of angle PSD is congruent to 18. When I say the measure of PSD, is that pink congruence or blue equality? That's the measure, so that's blue. What about congruence? That's pink. What about the number on the end, 18? Blue. So is this all the same color or are we all mixed up? We're mixed up. So what do we say about this expression? Invalid. Okay, what about the next one? Angle PSD is equal to 18. Is that valid or invalid? Invalid, why? Numbers blue, equals is blue. The object itself is pink, isn't it? So you're right. Right now it is invalid. How could I make it valid? What could I do to this to make it work? Yeah, if I were to put the M in there, then it would work. But as it is, it's invalid. Because this is still pink. What about number 4? The measure of angle PSD is equal to 18. Do we like that? We got a measure of an angle, that's blue. We got an equal sign, that's blue. We got a number, that's blue. So this one's valid. This is written in a correct format. Last one, angle A is congruent to angle B. That's valid, right? It's pink, pink, pink. Any questions on the distinction between congruence and equality when it comes to writing expressions? Yeah, if anyone wants to take a picture of these notes, you can. These are kind of helpful to have. Every time. Exactly right. Right. Correct. Does that help? Nicely phrased. You said that in a very articulate way. Gentlemen, stop, please. You're being recorded and put on YouTube forever. All right. Number 3. I've got a picture of some angles here. Got a little wonky there. And there's some lettering on here to help us communicate. I want you to give me the names of 3 different angles in this picture. Look at it, don't say it out loud. Would somebody please raise your hand and give me the name of one of the angles shown in this picture? Laura? Angle SRT. Good. This one right here is angle SRT. And I could have called it TRS, right? Either one is fine. Okay, now I want a different angle. Yeah. Angle T. Good. This is the one that most people miss. Generally, we try to avoid naming angles by one variable, one letter. We can do it this time. Why? Yeah, it's not ambiguous. It's not unclear which angle we're talking about. Would it be okay to name angle R up here just as angle R? No, because that'd be unclear if we're talking about the left one, the right one, or the whole thing. And what's the third angle we can name in here? Angle 1. Good. We can use numbers to name them as well when they're numbered. Any questions on naming angles? Any questions on my light turning off automatically, mysteriously? Because it's unclear what I'd be pointing to. Is it the one on the left here that's known as angle 1? Is the one on the right known as SRT? Or is it the entire angle? We'd be unclear because there's 3 angles at that vertex. Okay. Problem number 4 is going to ask you to use your compass to perform 2 skills. You're going to copy an angle, and then with that new angle, you're going to bisect it. It's possible that you've not brought your compass, in which case, in a few minutes, you can come up and check out a compass. Please be quiet. Don't do this now. Please be quiet. Everyone, please be quiet. Guys, you're going to do this in a few minutes, not right now. It's also possible you've forgotten how to do this. If that's the case, go into day 9 of Canvas modules. You'll see a YouTube video where I've modeled all of the constructions. You can fast forward to the point where it's doing these different pieces. You can watch it and get it from there. The last piece I want to spend time on is this idea of a protractor. A protractor allows us to measure an angle. This is an example of a protractor, and you'll notice I've set up several rays to allow us to create a bunch of different angles. Let's take a look at this first one, AOB. That means I'm starting from A, I'm going over to O, and now I'm going up to B. I can measure this angle 2 ways. One, I look at the degree numbers along the inside here, and I say A has a 0 value on the inside, B has halfway between 30 and 40, so that's a 35 on the inside. Therefore, I can say that the measure of AOB is equal to 35 minus 0, or 35 degrees. But I might choose, instead of reading those inside numbers, to look at these outer numbers. I see that A is at 180, and B is halfway between 140 and 150, or 145. And it's fine to choose those. I would take 180 minus 145, and that would still give me a 35-degree measure. In fact, the protractor postulate, which is what we're doing, is saying the measure of angle AOB is equal to the absolute value of A minus B. We're on a protractor A, point A has a value of little a, and point B has a value of little b. I subtract them, take the absolute value, and that will give me its measure. So take a look at COE. See if you can figure out the measure of COE from this protractor. You should get 80 degrees, whether you did 145 minus 65 or 115 minus 35. Both times you get 80. This worksheet is also asking you to classify as acute, right, or obtuse. It's an awful selection because there's like one obtuse and all the rest are acute. But you should be aware of those classifications as well. Any questions on using a protractor to measure angles? All right. That's all I've got for you for today. So the rest of the period is for you to be doing whatever you need to do to prepare for the test. If that involves retaking the quiz, you'll come up here to me. I'll turn on the quiz for you. You'll then use a Chrome-enabled device. It must be Chrome-enabled. That means you can use my Chromebooks up there. You can use your own computer device, not your phone, that is synced to your school ID. I need to be able to see you on GoGuardian for you to take this test online. Okay, you guys have the rest of the period to do what you need to do.